These are the headlines today, Friday the 13th of January. The Border Agency has issued an apology. Immigrants get 1 in 4 jobs, it has been revealed. Euro report from Nick Griffin. An Australian MP has caused outrage to her left-wing opponents. Burmese authorities have just released prominent political dissidents. Church services have been held on the 2nd anniversary of the Haiti earthquake. UK news. The Border Agency has issued an apology for not sending back a failed asylum seeker living in Leicester who then went on to murder his family. Aram Aziz killed his British-born partner Joy Small, their 3-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter. After he murdered them, he hung himself to avoid being imprisoned or deported. Immigrants get 1 in 4 jobs, it has been revealed by the media who promote the multicultural society. Newspapers in the United Kingdom over the last few days are claiming that 160,000 new jobs have gone to immigrants, yet another says every 4 immigrants puts 1 Briton out of work. New reports out are claiming that the migrant workers in Britain are earning more money than British workers. The UK papers seem to vary their stories, and it is difficult to know which awful figure to believe because they are all a salutary lesson to this and previous governments. Euro news. Nick Griffin's weekly contribution to World at 8 comes today from mid-Wales. I'm not back in Brussels as I write, he tells us. This week I've been working on the next issue of Freedom, which will be back from the printers by the time you hear this. The front cover story and the main theme of the new Freedom is the scandal of asylum seekers, and even failed asylum seekers, given electricity and gas bill handouts by councils up and down the country. In every cold snap, in even an average British winter, thousands of British pensioners, including war veterans and hard-working men and women who have paid their taxes all their lives, literally die of cold. No one helps them. Even when cold weather payments kick in, they don't get the meagre extra allowance until after the cold snap has passed, and by then, for many, it is too late. No such worries for asylum seekers though. As Freedom explains, thanks to a whistleblower in Salford, we now have a copy of a typical letter from a council asylum seekers team to their bogus migrant clients. This explains how the usual fortnightly crediting of money to their utility cards was extended to cover the extended holiday period over Christmas and New Year. As the letter told the asylum seekers, we will be putting £120 on the gas card and £90 on the electric card. What kind of special madness is this? These are fit young men who don't even have any legitimate reason to be in Britain, as they had a duty under international law to stop in the first safe country they could reach, not to pass through half a dozen of them to get to soft-touch Britain. Yet they get a Christmas energy handout of £310 on top of all their other payments, while millions of our own old folk get nothing more than the pitiful, basic state pension. It makes me really angry, says Nick, which is why our design team and I worked over the holiday period to produce a great new leaflet highlighting this injustice. Let's get the British National Party's New Year off to a flying start by getting these out by the tens of thousands. David Cameron and the rest of the anti-British political elite are counting on the British people remaining in the dark about such calculated and expensive insults. Let's get out there and shine the light of publicity and truth on them and watch them squirm. World news. An Australian MP has caused outrage to her left-wing opponents by speaking out about immigrants in Australia. In a comment she said all immigrants should be taught to use deodorant. The woman MP was then forced to apologise publicly about her comment. President Barack Obama's uncle, who is classed as an illegal immigrant, has appeared at a court in Framingham in the United States. The President's uncle, who is 67 years old, has outstayed his welcome in the United States and is still detained at the courtesy of the US immigration authorities. The new leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, third son of the previous leader who died last year, has been watching military parades in the country. He oversaw his Air Force display and also witnessed test firing of short-range missiles, North Korean officials have claimed. Burmese authorities have just released what they call prominent political dissidents in Burma. These are some of the veterans of the 1988 student protest, monks and ethnic minority activists. The country is undergoing a big shake-up after the release of Aung San Suu Kyi from house arrest after 15 years. She expressed her joy at the releases and said it was a positive sign from the new junta. The leader of the NLD party has stated that she will stand for a place in the Burmese parliament in their by-elections in April. A man wielding a knife was pounced on by police and security forces in Taiwan. The man entered a meeting of the opposition's Progressive Democratic Party's campaign office. Reports say no one was injured. Church services have been held today on the second anniversary of the earthquake in Haiti that decimated the capital city, Port-au-Prince, and resulted in the deaths of 316,000 people. There are still 600,000 people in displacement camps, and cholera has resulted in the death of 7,000 people, but 150,000 people have been infected. Men wore black suits to the churches and the women wore white in respect of the dead. Thought for the weekend. What to believe in the battle of the newspapers and the immigrant workers? Well, as a nationalist and a sceptic of official figures on any form of immigration, I'm inclined to believe the worst, and the worst will never be put before the public's eyes. I will stand up and be quoted as saying that I know that immigrant workers are taking British jobs mainly because our own people are greedy. We also have a high amount of immigrant bosses now who only employ their own and will not even interview an English-speaking person. At the reverse, my mother worked as an interviewer in the original Brook Street Bureau in the 60s, which was the first employment bureau for semi-professional staff, mainly secretarial. She had one person who was a highly educated West Indian lady and put her forward for what was seemingly an ideal job. She was interviewed and refused. When my mother inquired as to why, she was told she was ideal, but I could not employ her because she is coloured and the other staff would object. Those days are thankfully gone, but we have now veered towards the ridiculous. Now people are employed because they are non-English, and in some cases cannot speak our language at all, which doesn't matter because we're all making allowances. Why? We are remorselessly told about our ageing population, and that we need foreigners in to look after them. Well, I have had experiences of these people looking after our elderly, and would not wish it on anyone. Foreign doctors are employed where our own cannot get work, and these people are in some cases lethal. Remember, doctors bury their mistakes, while we lesser mortals have to live with them. The only reason we have the highest level of immigration per capita in the world is that we give them jobs. They do not come here to look after our sick or elderly, conserve money to put back into our economy, or in fact to do us any favours at all. They come here to work and make money, and that is the sum total of it. And successive governments have not only allowed it, but encouraged it. We are now seeing the result. Major cities which no longer look as if they are in England. Diseases which we eradicated years ago back in the ethnic population. Education backsliding to accommodate all the non-English speaking children, and a general massive attack by the television media that this is not only a good but a preferable state for our country and its people. England now needs a solid British National Party more than ever. One hopes that all the self-serving splinter groups and members who have suddenly developed odd excuses to break away and leave the party will realise that they are doing more harm than good. No party is without fault, and no people are without fault. We are all human, but we must remain nationalists at core, or the end of our country and way of life will be inevitable. And finally, a diamond that has been stolen in a diamond robbery, which netted the crooks nearly £13 million, has turned up in a small pawn shop in the back streets of Hong Kong. The diamond, which was said to be worth thousands of pounds, was owned by the Graff Diamond Store in London. Up to now, there seems to be no effort to return the diamond to its rightful owner. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar, and I wish you all a very good and safe weekend.